So I will talk about one of the pilot areas of the Transgreen project, which is actually a bit different from what we were talking up until now. I should have put a nice picture at the beginning of the presentation, but I didn't, so I will talk a little bit more so you understand why this situation, I think, is a bit different. First of all, unlike the other ones, this is an area where there is no actual highway at the moment, it's just a planned one. But, well, we come from Romania, and Romania is kind of a funny country with a bunch of funny people. On one hand, we do have all these large carnivores, all three species like brown bears, wolves, and lynx, and whenever you look at any kind of EU-level document about this species, you see that Romania has like the largest national thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So, on paper, Romania has the largest national populations from all three of these species. Yeah, we have very concrete numbers. The reality is that scientific data about all or any of these species is almost totally lacking in Romania. Basically, we do miss something like population numbers. Yeah, the estimation methods they use are unreliable, therefore the data is also unreliable. We have no idea about the distribution. I mean, we do have some idea, but this is definitely not precise. And we don't have any kind of other scientific data. We don't know what their diet composition is. We don't know mortality. We don't know natality. So basically, we almost miss anything that you could actually build on. One of the outcomes of this general lack of information, which is very simple to verify, I mean, you try to find any kind of scientific publication from Romania on any of these species, and basically you will find nothing. One of the outcomes of this situation last year in autumn was that the trophy hunting of all these three species in Romania has been suspended. Yeah. We are also a funny country because well, we have very little highways at the moment, but we have very, very ambitious plans for building highways, a lot of them. These plans sort of change from one year to the other. So last year, Romania has finalized its national master plan for transport. Then they also did the action plan for basically implementing this, the master plan. The two documents, so one is about the plan, the other one is on how to implement it, were totally different. So we didn't really say the same priorities. This specific highway would connect the region of Transylvania to the west to Moldova, another historical region. This is on the east, and it would also connect, it would go all the way basically to the Romanian border with the Republic of Moldova, and therefore it would also connect Moldova basically to the more western part of Europe. I come from an NGO, Milvus Group, who is a conservation NGO, but like Hildegard already said, it's a hybrid basically between research and NGO people. So what we do is that we do quite a lot of research with quite a lot of species, and then we try to use this data that we gather on solving conservation issues. We do take several approaches in this, like lobbying or blackmailing people. It depends on the situation, really, on how you can solve this problem. So we accidentally learned, actually, about this highway. We don't really know what the situation is with this highway at the moment, because like I said, the plans are really changing from one year to the other. But Romania does have a very ambitious plan for extending its highway network, and this highway is quite high on this list. What we have done, considering all the lack of scientific data that we can build on, we said that, okay, we will try to produce this scientific data ourselves, since we don't really have anything to start with. From our point of view, basically, well, this highway will across the Romanian Eastern Carpathians, so the most problematic areas, especially if you take into consideration the large carnivore species, will probably be the mountains and also the foothills to the west of the Eastern Carpathians, respectively to the east. You see three little yellow sections. These are the sections that we have focused our studies so far. These are also somewhat different, so the section I cannot really point with anything, I guess. No? No? Ah, okay. So this section right here, mostly to the west, this is the western foothills of Romania's Eastern Carpathians. This is a hilly area with a lot of human settlements, a somewhat fragmented habitat, still full with bears, full with wolves, and also to the more eastern part, closer to the mountains, it also has permanent lynx distribution. Then the next small section, this is roughly, let's say, 20 kilometers long. This section here is entirely different. This crosses a mountain with basically no human settlements, and it's an entirely forested area. This is also roughly 20 kilometers long, and then you have the more eastern, I lost the arrow, the more eastern section, which this goes into a very heavily forested area, but I think it was a Czech presentation which said that in here, actually the plant highway will go into a valley, and it will go all the way through the Carpathians, through this valley, where you already have an almost continuous row of human settlements, yeah, which have, in most places, have basically grown together. So I guess in a lot of cases, actually, there is already a total barrier, even without, for this wide-ranging species, even without having this highway built. From the official conservation side, we also don't have too many things on which to depend. We have only two protected areas which this plant highway will cross. One to the west is a Natura 2000 site. It is actually us who have designated this site based on the Habitats Directive, amongst others, for bears and for wolves. And the purpose of designating this site was that we knew that this highway will eventually be built. It's just really a matter of time. So we thought that, well, in Romania, it's kind of hard to work with these important companies, yeah. So we thought that this way we might have actually better chances to trying to persuade them in actually implementing some mitigation measures. We are also part of the management of this protected area. And then you have a nature park in the very eastern part of the mountains, which is actually quite famous in Romania. This is Vânător Neamț Nature Park, where this is one of the two pilot sites where European bison are being currently released back into the wild. Except that the highway will pass only through unprotected areas. I said that we actually started gathering some data. We first of all focused on the first two sections, so the area which is in this foothills in the Natura 2000 site, respectively the area which is in this untouched, let's say, well, without people kind of place in the mountains. We started fieldwork here in 2011 and 12. This is only focused on bears. Basically what we have done is that we designated two transects that were roughly following the plant highway route. These transects were divided into 100-meter long segments, and then on a monthly basis we have been monitoring for signs of bear presence and activity these transects. We had quite an elaborate methodology on the field on how to avoid double counting and such. Here are some pictures from the actual fieldwork phase. We are currently working on a manuscript, so what we believe in actually is to try to produce sound scientific data and then later base our arguments on this data. So you can see an example down there with the locations we have gathered. So after all the field work, respectively the data filtering, we have something like 1,000 spatially referenced records of bear presence and activity. On one hand, on a very fine scale, like these 100-meter segments, we have information on how these bears were using the habitat. Respectively, we have converted this data into presence, absence data, and then now we are performing an occupancy modeling. I think that this steps will actually provide us with quite good information, I guess, I hope, for the exact locations where we will have to demand mitigation measures. Basically, this highway, the technical plans for this highway are already done, and they are already ready for a number of years already. No mitigation measures, of course, are included in this. So I guess this will be quite tough fight when it comes to it. This is the other section. We started to deal with this later on. What I forgot to say is that I basically at Milvus I lead and I work in a small scale but long-term project focusing on brown bears. So that's why most of the results we actually have related to this are also limited to bears. On the second section, which is a lot longer, but it's also probably more problematic, we employed a different method. Basically, we were using hair traps for bears. For this, we prepared a very, very disgusting and then very effective lure ourselves. In the middle picture, you can see actually how one of these trapping sites looked. We performed the first phase of this hair trapping session in 2014. We will repeat it in this summer, and then for a third time actually to be able to really interpret and use the results in 2020. Additionally, we have also carried out a tracking survey on the same segments. Basically, before the end of this present project like Transgreen, we will only have partial results from this survey. There you can see some of these hair trapping locations. Then the hair samples we actually managed to collect, these were analyzed in Germany by one of the best genetics groups in Europe at Senckenberg. And some information on these individuals we have managed to identify. Yeah, we will repeat the exact same survey later on this year and then once more in 2020. Like I said, we have also done a tracking survey, but this time for all 3 species, and we have only detected a few instances bear presence, only 2 instances of wolf presence, and no lynx. This area, it really seems like the western part is more of a concern, especially that on the eastern part, after the lake to the east. This is this valley, which I told you that already is very, very fragmented. There is also a lot of illegal logging in the area, and there's a very, very heavy poaching going on including for bears in this area, so I wonder it's not, I don't think that it's a big surprise that we didn't actually manage to confirm the species from many places. Besides these 2 targeted surveys, we do have from this area some other data that I think we will be able to use in the process of trying to convince Romanian authorities to implement mitigation measures. For some time, this is actually the more western part, so the foothills area in the lower left and the mountainous area in the upper right corners. We've been monitoring, mapping, and basically measuring bear dens in these areas. These are the locations that you can see respectively the route of the planned highway. We will have this this survey finished at the end of April this year. We are also working on a paper on these results, and I do think that this will be one additional argument besides the targeted surveys that we will actually manage and will need to use with the Romanian discussions. And we do actually carry out several activities in these first 2 smaller segments related to bears in this small project. Amongst others, we also color bears in this area. I don't think that actually these data sets will be ready in due time for this project, but I still think that we can use this as something like an additional reasoning to trying to again convince Romanian authorities, with which I'm a bit reluctant as coming from Romania. This is actually one bear that got poached after a while. This is another one. So we can sort of like play around a little bit with this data to also indicate areas where we don't have any other data from. Yeah, well, this bear just got shot after 6 months of monitoring. This is more interesting because this is actually at the really beginning of the planned highway close to the city of Tîrgu Mureş, where I live. We have not been performing the survey at this really starting section, but we do have some other data as well. This is just to show that already a planned highway, which only exists on paper, can constitute already a perfect barrier for bears. This is a female that never actually crossed the line where this highway will go. This has nothing to do with this highway, but this is one of the reasons why we believe that it's really important to try to mitigate the negative effects that such a development would bring. This is a sub-adult male, which really, I think, sort of like is breaking the records in Romania. So within the present project in Transgreen, what we were thinking of is that we would like to supplement the data we have so far, especially for these first two sections. We would like to do this for wolves and for lynx on one hand, because we think that there might be actual differences between what bears need and what these other two species of carnivores need. And also I think that it would be, again, much more convincing to have these additional data sets as well. What we will do, we are currently working on the methodology for these surveys. This would last for 12 months. We would start most likely in April this year. So we should have like a final data set within a year then. So what we will do is we will have a hair trapping session for wolves, which would be really a premiere for Romania, and then also camera trapping methodology for lynx in these two sections in the beginning. Thank you.